welcome to the fourth of our conversations in our life story series. Today we are talking with City Councillor Natalie Harris, who is also a mental health advocate. I'm just going to read Natalie's bio because I don't want to forget any of her awards. Natalie Harris is a City of Barrie Ward 6 councillor and a member of the Canadian Women of Impact Gallery. She found her way into the world of politics after playing a role in the Royal Assent of Ontario's PTSD Bill 163, and Canada's PTS Bill, Bill C-211. She is a retired advanced care paramedic, for which she received the Ontario Paramedics Association Exemplary Service Award in 2018 and possesses a bachelor's degree in health science from Victoria University, for which she received the Outstanding Achievement Award in 2010. Along with being an educator with organizations such as Georgian College and the Sunnybrook Centre for Pre-Hospital Medicine, she is an avid writer and has written several books, including Save My Life School, A First Responder's Mental Health Journey, with foreword written by six-time Canadian Olympian Clara Hughes, and was a blogger for the Huffington Post. In 2017, she founded the national peer support group Wings of Change and is a co-founder and president of the not-for-profit Brainstorm Revolution. She is the creator of Addiction Get Well cards and has spoken at countless events nationally about her own battles with addiction and mental illness. She is the recipient of the John Graves Simcoe Medal of Honor, was named one of Barrie's leading women, and has received the Tema Conter Memorial Resiliency Award in 2017, and was also presented with the One Woman Fearless Women Award in 2018. Above all, her proudest accomplishment is that of being a mom to Carolyn and Adam and a Grammy to Beckham. So welcome, Natalie. It is such an honor to have you here to speak with us today. And also I feel like blessed to be able to call you a friend. So thank you for making the time to speak with us today.
My pleasure.
So the purpose of this series is to challenge stigma, to show that no one is immune to issues of mental illness, substance use, and homelessness, and to honor the voices of lived experience. So we are really honored to have you here today. So yeah, people have a stereotype or an image of what a person that uses drugs looks like. And typically that image that people have in their head is someone that's uneducated, that's homeless, that's using drugs in a back alley somewhere. And you yourself struggled with substance use issues, and you don't fit that stereotype. So I was just wondering if you maybe could share a little bit of your story and your struggle with substance use and recovery.
For sure. Yeah, I love that you're starting it with the fact that it doesn't discriminate. You know, substance use and addiction is a disease that affects anyone. And I really didn't think in my life that that would affect me. Because to be honest, before it did, I wasn't as educated, obviously, as I was and about it, and kind of maybe bought into some of the stigma as well. And then when I realized that it can happen to anyone, including myself, that's when I needed to burst through the stigma. But it wasn't easy. It definitely wasn't. I didn't even recognize how much I was battling with alcohol and usually my prescription drugs, which are benzodiazepines, and other over-the-counter drugs. And I was just mostly kind of cruising through being a paramedic, and it was a very hard job and very rewarding, though, going back to school, becoming an advanced care paramedic, and having two kids, you know, going through some roller coasters with relationships, but genuinely still feeling like I was a healthy person. And unfortunately, part of the first responder world culture is, you know, going out and some people can drink without a problem and they can go and celebrate and do whatever. And I thought I fit into that category, and slowly but surely I realized that I didn't, because I was really using alcohol eventually to numb pain that was coming from an undiagnosed PTSD at that time from calls I did as a paramedic. And so I was starting to have a lot of nightmares and night terrors, and this was in like 2000 and 2012. And I had no idea really why that was happening. This was even before any of that PTSD legislation, and I was just so concerned as to why is this going on. I would even yell myself awake, and my daughter was in the next room, and she'd hear me, and she even heard me sleepwalking, and I don't remember that, obviously. So there was something in my subconscious that was hurting me, and I didn't know how to process it, so I drank. And I couldn't drink enough, I guess, at some point when the numbing, it works until it doesn't work anymore. And I was very lucky and very blessed. A certain night I overdosed, and I was so fortunate that my friend who I was texting is a dispatcher, and she recognized there was something wrong with my texts and called 911 for me. And I really don't remember much of what happened that night, but that was the awakening. You know, my kids saw me get taken away in an ambulance, and I stopped breathing apparently at a couple points, and people were like, okay, something's wrong. What's going on? Like, how is Natalie, who definitely had a good mask on, this very solid, everything's good mask, is here in the hospital and almost died? And then we started investigating that and looking into where can she go to get help for PTSD. So I got diagnosed for PTSD, but still in the back of my mind, I thought, I still don't have a problem with alcohol or drugs in any way, because it's very hard to come to terms with that myself. So I went to Homewood in Guelph. I was so blessed to do that after I stayed with my friend for many, many weeks, and she helped me and took care of me and made sure I was safe. That's a blessing, a huge blessing. And when I went to Homewood, I thought, okay, I'm here for PTSD and like a sprinkle of, you know, substance abuse. Well, I was sadly, you know, but fortunately in the end, happy to realize it was very heavily for treatment of addiction. And the root problem was the trauma that the PTSD was kind of showing through with. And it was the beginning of, like you said, removing a mask of stigma. So at that time, I was doing really well as a paramedic. You know, I was teaching my peers, I was teaching students. I felt like I was at the top of my career. My career was, you know, headed to wherever I wanted it to go. And here I am off work in a treatment center, and I was just so embarrassed. I couldn't believe, like, no, like everybody's wrong, and I'll just cruise through these 8 weeks and then be done and go back to work and everything's good. And I really started to learn how sick I was. And as soon as I started to open up and really, okay, why do I recognize myself and everyone in this room? And then Homewood was really great because it also had a group that was basically all first responders or healthcare providers. And I was in rooms with doctors and dentists and nurses and you name it. And I was like, wow, this does not discriminate. This is anyone. And this is me. I belonged in that room, and that was very hard. So I started blogging about it because literally I was like such a perfectionist and so afraid of somebody knowing that there was maybe even something wrong with me. And I felt if I don't put this out there, I'll hide it still. I need to somehow rip off a mask that's been on me for a while and I haven't noticed, and feel that pain and vulnerability, because I knew myself I would just start doing worse, because I was already headed down the path of looking for harder drugs because what I was doing wasn't working anymore, and I was just exhausted. I couldn't sleep, so I needed to pass out to try to get some kind of rest, which it wasn't. And so I blogged, and the blog at that time, Clara Hughes was a very large voice in the world of mental wellness, and she was a Bell Let's Talk ambassador. And I saw her on the news talking about her struggle, and I'm like, she's a 6-time Olympian, and she's a strong woman, the strongest you could even pick out of an example, and she's sick. So it inspired me to put the blog out publicly. And I shared it with her, and she retweeted it, and that kind of grew organically into this journey, this mental health journey of recovery, and she wrote the foreword to my book, and we are still friends. We still talk on a pretty regular basis, and she's just an inspiration to me, and even through the hard times, because it's not always easy to be an advocate about this, because it still brings up a lot of things, but it gets easier as it goes. She said, just don't stop talking. And when I've wanted to kind of maybe stop talking, because I've gotten hate over the years, and I've gotten a lot of, criticism from people sometimes, and I just remember it's more powerful to keep talking and to still show that I have that strength inside of me, and to really prove to other people, if they're watching, that talking heals, then I needed to keep talking. And there's lots more woven into that story, but it was the beginning of recovery. I've had relapses over the years. It's a struggle that, I've been, though I haven't had a drink in, I think, about a year and a half now, which I'm really excited, and I don't even take benzos for anything anymore. So I'm very happy. But it's still always something that I'm going to have to battle with, but I know the tools now. I know what recovery looks like. I have the community around me, and I was lucky to go to Homewood, and I've gone twice. I went again for PTSD again. And that's not the blessing everyone gets. So that's where my voice goes into the community, because I feel like I'm such an exception to the rule that I got to go. I had insurance. I went to this expensive treatment center, and I feel like it's kind of my job to bring that message out, because not everyone can spend $30,000 to $60,000 on a treatment center. So, and that's the Coles Notes version.
Wow. Yeah, it's so inspiring to hear you share your journey, and I know speaking for the first time and putting it out there publicly is so scary, right?
Yeah.
But I know even for myself, I've been a mental health advocate for years now as well. And you're so scared when you speak publicly for the first time. And there is hate and criticism. But there's also a lot of thank you.
Right.
Thank you for making me feel not alone. So does that give you strength?
Yeah.
When you get messages from other people that, have had similar experiences and they're grateful that, someone is able to talk and share those things so that they feel less alone.
Absolutely. That is what keeps you going. Excuse me. I know I get messages like that almost every day from different places around the world, and it's beautiful. I even had somebody reach out to me, and he said that my story, this was pretty recent, had helped him and encouraged him to keep going and recover. And he sent me a clip of my favorite, he didn't even know this, but one of my favorite movies, my brother and I grew up watching Rocky. And there's a part in Rocky where he's down in the ring, and his opponent, Apollo Creed, has his arms up in the air because he thinks he's won. And Rocky somehow pulls up and comes back. And he sent me this clip, and it was, I think, during a difficult time, probably some hate was headed my way. And I'm like, that's my favorite movie even. So I took a screenshot of when Rocky's down and made it my screensaver, because he's down, but he's not out. And it really goes to show that's life. Life is hard. Life is really hard. It's not fair. And there will be down times, but it makes it all worthwhile when you've helped even one person. I'm a helper. I was a paramedic, and then as a mom, you're a helper. It's innately who I am. So that's just everything to me. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And like you said, you were blessed being that you were a paramedic and that you had benefits and you were able to go to a top-notch treatment program, but that is not the reality for a lot of people that have substance use issues or mental illness. How do you think your journey could have had a different outcome if you didn't have those supports?
I don't think I'd be alive, Christine. I some of my relapses over the years have been quite serious, and it was life-saving, life-changing, because it also put me on a new path into, well, where do I find some purpose? And the purpose came from advocating for legislation. I never thought I'd see myself in the world of politics. It really, like you and I have talked about before, sometimes things happen so organically. And if you really just follow that path and follow that road, it is bringing you to health and recovery. But I never take, I praise Homewood, and, I just think they're amazing. I've gone back a couple times to do talks for them and to really share how important what they do is. So I see it as it's such a gift, and that's why I fight really hard to make that gift available to anyone. Because I really know it's not. And it's hard because we get messages all the time about, okay, this loved one's ready for treatment and this, and it's just like, it's very hard to get on a wait list. It's hard to be able to afford it. It's very rare to have the blessing I did to go.
Yeah, you're definitely blessed. And the wait lists are so long.
Oh, yeah.
And people when they're ready, when they need it, that's when they need to go. That's when the space needs to be available, not 6 months later, because 6 months later they might not be here.
Absolutely.
Or they're in a different place, right?
Yeah.
So when someone says, I'm ready to go,
it
really needs to be a place for them to go to at that point. And that's what we see on a daily basis with the people that, that we work with, for sure. So for a lot of people that use substances and stuff like that, they're using substances to cope, right? With sometimes it's physical illnesses, sometimes it's mental illnesses, and often it's trauma, right? So I'm just maybe if you could talk about how you started to use the drugs to cope with trauma, right? That coping mechanism, right? Because people have they've attached this moral thing to drug use, right? It's a moral failing, and they don't understand why people actually use.
Yeah, it's it blows me away that alcohol is just, the society has made it so acceptable, and it's really one of the most dangerous drugs. It's a drug, and the government makes a lot of money off of selling it, so here we are. But I've seen just so many people have their lives ravaged by alcohol alone, even in my profession, because we are exposed to trauma as first responders every single day. And, people will be like, well, you signed up for it. And I wrote about this in my book. We sign up for helping people, but we don't sign up for nightmares. We don't sign up for having to struggle to go to bed. We don't sign up for, all the things that come along with it. We sign up for meeting educational goals, helping our community. That's why first responders are first responders. And sadly, when I was a student, it was very limited knowledge of what you got taught of what is PTSD. I kind of knew, to be honest. When I was a paramedic, I heard PTSD was maybe something a patient would have. You'll be treating people with PTSD, and that was kind of how I saw it. I heard, of course, PTSD was in first responders, but it really was still quite quiet then. But it can happen to anyone because the trauma is real. And as a student, I wasn't taught how to talk about the trauma. We were more so taught to pull up your socks, move on. It was more of a perceived, it's an unsaid weakness, I guess. But it's not a weakness, and that's the problem. It's strength that really is what makes a person talk, because it isn't easy to share your story and share what's internally you're battling with. It for some reason you can't just get through, and the reason that you're reaching for more alcohol or doubling up on your sleeping pills or doing whatever is because of something that you don't even know how to talk about yet. So that was really prevalent in the years that in 2012, I did a really big call, and it was very traumatizing, and it caused what's called a moral injury, and I'd never even heard of that before. And what that is I somehow, as a person who loved humanity and wanted to help my community, saw a person harm two individuals consciously, albeit he had mental illness and definitely lots of other things that were going on that brought him to that place. But he became my patient, and I know I had to go to and testify at this call, for this call, and looking into his eyes and just really seeing this emptiness at first made me really hate the world. It literally changed my perception. Everything went dark. Everything was very, how did this happen? But that was the beginning of a journey of how to forgive as well. So I was really happy about that. But going back to why, you reach, it's not an overnight thing. So my progression from doing that call in 2014, I didn't go to treatment until the call was 2012. I didn't even go to treatment until 2014. So 2 years went by, and now I'm buying boxes of wine. And now I'm, probably showing up to work way too hungover than I should have been. And really barely clinging on to, and missing work and not being able to do 4 night shifts in a row because it was just too much. I was exhausted. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, if I take extra Gravel, then I'll go to bed and I'll finally get asleep. I was just, or Benadryl or whatever. It was just like jelly beans. Like, it was affecting my body, but I still didn't want to tell anyone there was a problem. And it was an overdose, an accidental overdose that really, I couldn't hide anymore. But funny thing, actually, comes to mind. So this is the way, how the stigma works. And it comes with patient confidentiality as well. But the first time I overdosed, the person or the paramedics that picked me up actually covered me entirely when they rolled me into Emerge to protect my identity, which I respect and I understand why he did that. But I know that wouldn't have happened if I broke my leg. Nobody would have wrapped me up and covered my face if I was going in because my sugars were low. Like, it was profound in the sense now looking back as it was kind of a bit of hiding some shame, probably. Like, this is one of ours and here she is and we're going to take care of her. But does she want everyone to know that this is why she's here? So I think he did that out of care and compassion and privacy. But I still always wondered, I don't think that would have happened if I came in with a heart attack, I wouldn't have been bundled up. So it takes a long time to really be able to realize how any kind of drug, including alcohol, has just trampled your life. It became my normal. It became my normal. And then I was hiding wine. Then people started getting, okay, maybe you're drinking a little bit too much, or you draw a line in the sand, and I'll be like, okay, as long as I make it to work, I'm good. And then I'd start missing work. And then you push the line a little farther. Well, as long as I get through blah, 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 as long as I still take my son to swimming lessons. And then I was making excuses to not go to swimming lessons because it meant I wasn't at home able to drink enough wine to hopefully get sleep at night. It affected my whole life, and it's just little tiny pieces that get you there. So it can happen to anyone. And I sadly see it, all the time. And that's what, going to 12-step meetings or going to Al-Anon meetings is about learning not only how to help yourself, but to help others. Because one of the biggest things when you're wrapped and involved in addiction is the person in it sometimes can't see they're really in it. So that's hard. And alcohol is the sneaky one because it's so accepted by society.
It's almost like something's wrong with you if you don't use alcohol, right?
Oh, exactly. If I say, no, I don't drink, they're like, they right away think, well, okay, it's because she has a problem with drinking, which I do, but it should be okay for anyone just to say, I just don't drink, and that's okay. But it's still, that'll be a long ways away for anything like that changing, unfortunately.
And I think it's interesting what you were talking about, the stigma between mental illness and physical illness, right? It's huge.
Yes.
And, being covered because, there's a shame connected if you're being brought to the hospital for a mental illness versus a physical illness. And I've seen that, in our struggles to get Ryan help and with the people that we serve, that they're treated differently. People that go to the hospital with mental illness are not given the same respect.
Right.
They're not given the same care or treatment as people that are coming in for physical illness. It's like we've separated the two. The brain is the most important organ in our body.
Right.
We need to just call it health, instead
Amen.
of making a separation between mental health and physical health. And people that do struggle with mental illness or use substances, when they go to the hospital for a physical illness, that's dismissed.
Right.
They're just labeled already. It's on their file that they're a drug seeker or that they have a mental illness. And so whatever they're coming in for, they don't even take it seriously, right? Yeah. And so I see more and more over the work that we're doing that people don't go to the hospital. And it puts their life at risk for physical illnesses. Like we see people that have illnesses or injuries that could be cared for and that are simple. Absolutely. But they get so complex because they wait so long to get medical attention because of the stigma attached to those issues. And we definitely need to work on that for sure.
Well, speaking even to that, Christine, when I've been obviously a patient many times in the mental health department, and in the first time, or maybe it was the second time, to be honest, I don't remember,